Hey guys, let's make a cinnamon cheesecake coffee cake thingy. That's what I actually had named this on my recipe files, a coffee cake thingy. And it's actually a pretty good thingy. We're gonna start with just a base. So we're gonna make like a cake batter, and then we're going to make the cheesecake filling, and then we're going to make a topping, and you're going to love it. So let's start with 1.5 cups of almond flour. And then we're going to put in, oops, the almond flour almost got away from me. Then we're gonna put in 2 tablespoons of coconut flour. And you can also use oat fiber. Actually, I'm using oat fiber. It's either 2 tablespoons of coconut flour or 1/3 cup of oat fiber. And I'm using oat fiber because you know I love the texture and I love that it's pretty much 0 carb. Then we're gonna put in some sweetener. I'm only using 1/4 cup of sweetener. So this is not overly sweet at all. And then let's put in some of our seasonings. Well, baking powder first. We're gonna put 1 teaspoon of this. And for the seasonings, I'm keeping it really simple. Notice I called it a cinnamon cheesecake thingamadoo or thingy. I'm doing that because it's a really basic cinnamony type taste, but you could make this pumpkin. You're going to add some carbs to it. You could make it faux zucchini apples. Again, you're going to add a little bit of carbs to it. I like it simple as cinnamon, but you can add clove or nutmeg or ginger, like whatever you kind of like with that fallish cinnamon flavor. So I'm sticking to simple. I'm going to use 1 teaspoon of cinnamon. Now, if you love cinnamon, you might be tempted to put more. Don't. We're going to layer this up. So this won't be the only cinnamon that goes in this recipe. So there's my teaspoon. And I'm going to use 1/4 teaspoon of salt because I use unsalted butter. Okay, my salt in there. And what else? I'm checking my notes. That's good for now. Let's give this a stir. I always try to make sure that I stir the flours up because I don't want things getting gloppy, like when you add the wet ingredients. I think it's really important that you do that. So I'm just giving this stir of the dry ingredients. Now let's add in the eggs and the butter. I'm gonna put the butter in first. This is 6 tablespoons of melted butter. And even all of it's not melted, it's still soft enough to be okay. Okay. And then let's drop our eggs in there. And these are 3 large eggs. My eggs have been sitting out to be close to room temperature. I think they probably are room temperature, so they shouldn't make the butter cold. Okay, I can stir this by hand, but I'm going to take the lazy route and use a hand mixer. And you can see this is just a really thick batter. The last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add some vanilla extract. Just 1 teaspoon because we're going to add more to the other layers. And if you get an oops in there, it's just fine. And I'm going to use some maple extract. Now, maple is awesome if you can't find brown sugar. It gives it that wonderful depth of flavor. I'm only using 1/2 teaspoon. Yeah, I'm only using 1/2 teaspoon, but you'll see this come up again later in the recipe. So this isn't the only time we'll use our maple extract. Let me mix this one more time. Okay, and I'm going to clean these beaters off the best I can, not 100%. All right, so let's make the filling. And I'm gonna call this like the lazy cinnamon cheesecake thingy, because we're not even gonna wash this. We're just gonna use it again to make the cheesecake part. Don't tell anybody. Okay, so this is 12 ounces of cream cheese. Again, it's been sitting at room temperature, so it's nice and softened. And I'm gonna mix it with the sweetener first, because you don't want that gritty kind of sweetener taste or texture to it, that feel. You know, I'm a texture person. So this is 1/2 cup of sweetener. So 1/2 cup of sweetener, 12 ounces or 1.5 blocks of cream cheese. Okay, so with the cream cheese and the sweetener mixed together, we're going to add in the egg and 2 teaspoons of vanilla extract. So it's 1 large egg. Now, when it comes to mixing in the egg, I don't want to overbeat it. Remember, this is kind of our cheesecake layer. And so I'm just going to get this mixed in until it's nice and incorporated, but I don't want to overbeat it. And I said 2 teaspoons of vanilla. I may use all my vanilla in this one, this one recipe. Okay, let's barely beat this. I know, guys, you're supposed to put a towel under the bowl so it doesn't do that. I failed. All right, stir it all in there together. And I'm gonna get it one more time. I've got a few little lumps of cheesecake. I don't want a lumpy. Okay, so we're ready to put our coffee cake cheesecake thingy together. So here comes the fun part, and more lazy. So yeah, maybe I should call this like the lazy thingy, the lazy coffee cake thing. So basically I'm gonna put about half of this in the bottom of my greased 9x9 pan. So I'm just smoothing it out once I get it in there. It's not going to be a terribly thick layer, but that's okay. Just wanna get it across the pan, corner to corner. Keep in mind it'll spread out a little as it bakes. I'm using a 9x9 pan. If you use something smaller like an 8-inch, just know it's going to have to cook a bit longer. Okay, that's about good enough. I'll put a little blob there, a little blob there where it's thin, and one more little blob there. And I think that's gonna be perfect blobs. Okay, now let's put the filling in. Now this is the thick cheesecake filling. So the same kind of thing, I'm gonna pour it in and smooth it as best I can without messing up the bottom layer. Okay, got just a bit more in there I can grab. Gonna get all the goodness out. And I'm gonna gently smooth it side to side. Now, we're going to take, again, in the spirit of lazy, we're going to dollop the rest of the topping over the top, and we're going to do it gently, so a little at a time, because we want to come back and we want to make sure that we've covered up that cheesecake layer. Doing my best here. Okay, so it isn't perfect, but I think it's good enough. There are a few edges that maybe are thicker, but that's okay. And the big thing is you don't want it swirled. So I think we've done a reasonably good job. And if you're like me, you could probably spend like the rest of the day fiddling with this. But let's stop there and put on the yummy topping. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is sprinkle some toppings across the top. We've got some cinnamon, we've got some sugar, I've got some pecans. Now that's optional. If you're trying to make sure you're being really conservative with carbs, you might want to leave off the pecans. Walnuts work too, but the same kind of thing, you're going to have carbs. And I've got more maple extract and butter. So let's put the maple extract in. I'm using a half teaspoon. And I'm going to go ahead and mix that with my butter. Okay. So I've got a full tablespoon of cinnamon. I love cinnamon. If that's too much for you, you can back it down to a teaspoon or even 2 teaspoons. But let me show you what a tablespoon looks like. Okay, I'm going to sprinkle it over the top, just like this. Again, it doesn't have to be perfect. There we go. But I like to use a lot of the cinnamon because you know the cinnamon is there. And you can use your finger if it tends to get clumpy. Okay. You can also just shake it from the top of the thing instead of measuring if you want. All right, so that's my cinnamon. Now we're going to sprinkle sugar on top. And this is going to give it just a really nice kind of crispiness on top, even without the pecans. And what I'm doing now, that was a tablespoon of ground cinnamon. I'm putting 1/3 cup of sweetener. And now we're going to add our chopped pecans. I'm using 1/4 cup. It's really hard for me not to use more than that. You probably can get away, honestly, you could just use 2 tablespoons. And these are chopped pretty finely so that I can scatter them around throughout. And here comes the best part. Remember how we mixed that maple extract into our melted butter? Well, this is 3 tablespoons of melted butter, and it's a half teaspoon of maple extract. Again, I'm just mixing it together. And I'm going to pour it over the top. Again, trying to keep it mixed. It smells amazing. I wish you guys could smell this in my house right now. So this is going to go into an oven that's preheated to 375 degrees. It's going to take 30 to 40 minutes. You're going to know it's done when it's a nice golden, rich golden brown on top. And you can take your finger and press lightly in the center, and it doesn't really yield. It shouldn't be mushy. It will continue to cook a little bit when you remove it from the oven, but you want it to be kind of solid through. You don't want it all soggy. Okay guys, so here is our lazy coffee cake. It's still really hot. In the instructions, I tell you to wait at least 10 to 15 minutes before you cut into this. Now that's if you want it to hold together and you want the texture to be a little bit better. The thing with low carb baked goods is the texture just improves the longer it sits. This has only been cooling about 3 minutes, but I'm gonna cut into it. Now, honest to goodness, I promise, it's so rich and filling that you really can get 12 servings from this. Really, you can, I promise. David's probably gonna say, no, you can't. I'm going to cut what would be 1/12 of it. And I'll show you what 1/12 serving looks like. I hope that this holds together. I'm gonna go for a corner piece. It is really hot. And again, the longer you wait, it's gonna lift out pretty up. Okay, try that again. And you can see the layers there of the cream cheese. Okay, so that is not a very pretty piece, but this is our cinnamon coffee cake cheesecake thing. I hope that if you make this, that your family will enjoy it too.